Hello, and let's get on with it. I'm gonna talk about the game balance and some of the mechanics today, so let's start with abilities. I'll point out some of the ones that are not really useful. And let's start with Bullseye. After performing 3 headshots within 30 seconds, you recover stamina. Some of the stamina at least. So remember the last time you scored 3 headshots within half a minute in PvP? Yeah, me neither. It doesn't really happen. So it's basically a PvE skill, and as all the skills that are based on PvE, for me at least, it's useless. And a similar things goes to precision. 3 unblocks attacks in a row, 30 seconds. Yeah, that's not really gonna happen often. It's gonna happen, not often. And even though it will happen sometimes, it has a cooldown on top of that. So not a very good skill, and really bad skill. The next one is the breaker. If you max it out, it increases the damage due to shields by 15%. If that would be 50 instead of 15 to the very specific skill, I still probably wouldn't take it, because it's out of the way and it's surrounded by very useless skill, as I just said. Another one is the shield one. 20% stamina reduction for blocking. Don't know about that one. If you guys use it, please tell me. But to me, I don't use it even on my tank characters, so I don't really like that skill. The next one is Battle Rage. Now, I don't really have an issue with that skill being underpowered, but I do have this issue with this skill, that it's bugging out your character because of the cooldown. I have to leave the tournament on a couple occasions on the Battle Rage characters because they bug out when the cooldown triggers or passes. So, in my opinion, reduce the threshold for the skill activation, don't know, maybe like 40%, but reduce the bloody cooldown, because it bugs your character out. I mean, what's worse than that? And last but not least is the skill that's on the completely opposite end, and which is Man of Steel. If you are wearing the heavy armor, this skill is completely, absolutely mandatory, and as such should not be a choice, so should not exist. And why is that? It increases your reductions that the armor provides by 15%. Now, this doesn't seem like a lot, but believe me, it is. On the heavy armor, this will double your effective hit points against piercing damage, and it will increase your effective hit points against slashing damage by 50%. So it's not a 15% increase to your effective hit points, it's either double for piercing or 50% for slashing. So you're gonna die in 6 swings instead of 4, for example. And if you don't think that's mandatory, then, well, you're kinda hopeless. Right, but that's it about abilities, and now let's go to the Trinity that this game is trying to pull. Like, what I mean by Trinity, we have 3 damage types, we have 3 armor types, and supposedly each armor type should be good against type of damage. Now, as you can see, the heavy armor slashing reduction is about 700, and the piercing reduction is about 850. Now, compare that to medium armor. Slashing reduction in medium armor is only like a few percent higher than the heavy armor's slashing reduction. So they're basically almost the same in that department. When it comes to piercing reduction, however, right, the effective hit points on heavy armor are 5 times more than medium armor. Okay, you're gonna take 5 times more hits in heavy armor against a piercing weapon than you will against a medium, And that alone makes the medium armor completely useless, because piercing damage is very often used in big fights. Piercing damage is daggers, piercing damage is sword thrusts, piercing damage is spears, and most importantly, bows, arrows. You're gonna get hit by bows a lot when you're doing a siege or a big fight, which makes medium armor that is almost like basically no reduction compared to this other melee armor which is heavy. It makes it irrelevant. So medium armor should be buffed, because as it is now, it's useless. Very useless, especially after the recent balance to the weapons that I will cut right here. Is a very good balance that they did. The recent balance to the weapons is the one that I completely agree with, right? Because the piercing weapons were buffed, while Holden spears, and we have a Holden spear somewhere here. Holden spears were shortened a bit, while normal spears were made a bit longer. But the only issue I might have with this one is it should be bludgeoning damage, 50% or 40%, but bludgeoning damage, not slashing, because it doesn't really make much sense. And the thing about weapons, the balance is really good at the moment, except for when it comes to crafting. I think all the 200 weapons should have the same crafting cost, and all the 100 weapons should have the same crafting cost as well, because it creates the balance of, as you're trying to get rock, paper, scissors, right? You don't really want to have the situation that you have now, which is rock, paper, shotgun. Yeah, reference to some sites. So that's about crafting. The next thing is the mechanic. Again, I have an issue with how you're striking with just using an attack button without binding yourself directional attacks. And let's go into options for a bit, shall we? When you click here, you're gonna display these attack indicators. So that's what I did to have it. And once I'm here with the options, I'm gonna talk about another thing. Some people might not know about it. Look at this option here. Receiving messages from players from other nations. Uncheck it. Unless you really like to hear some whining, insults and general toxicity towards yourself, you will check it and let it flow to you. But if you don't really want to hear all that, just uncheck it, and believe me, your game experience is only going to benefit from that. So unless you're a toxic bugger, don't bother checking it. Leave it off and you'll be good. So we're gonna check the display attacks for now, because I want to show you something. Like in the games like Mountain Blade, which is a clear reference to this game, right? When you click and move your mouse, it will attack from that direction. But in this game, like you can see in the middle, it's the indicator showing that I'm gonna attack from the right direction, right? But if I click and move the mouse at the same time, even in a different direction, it's still gonna attack from the right. So as you can see, I moved left immediately after clicking, or along with the click, but it still attacks from the right. Same thing goes from the other direction. Like I put the indicator at the top, and I click and attack from other direction, it's still gonna go from the top. So what I mean by that, this should have a delay. Like either the first few frames of any attack animation should be common. So after you click, it should be able to determine the attack direction by moving your mouse, because as it currently works, you have to move your mouse first and then attack. So again, instead of click and attack, which will not change the direction, you have to move and then attack. So in essence, you have to delay your click by moving your mouse first. And the crucial word in here is delay. Because of that delay, well, your attacks are slower, which means you are at a disadvantage when it comes to dueling, especially dueling. So if you really want to be dueling during arenas and such, you really have to bind yourself attack directions and probably block directions as well. And if you ask me personally, I don't think that is a good gameplay. I mean, I really prefer to be using mouse for blocks. I really would prefer to use mouse left clicks for attack, just as similar games do, without having to delay myself and training to do it, basically putting myself at disadvantage. Because if the game is based on keybinds instead of that, well, then that turns dueling into a quick time event, really, doesn't it? It's especially with the indicators, that's basically quick time event. So yeah, either put a delay or make a few frames or the animations come on to all the attacks and blocks. So like, you know, don't make people who want to play the game as this way, like using mouse and using it the way the like previous games of the same type worked. Don't put these people at a disadvantage. I mean, I'm among these people. I would really prefer to be using mouse and using the movement of it instead of being a keyboard pianist, you know. And last issue I have is the deposit space. You only have like 6 bags in it. I'm not gonna run and show you. You have to believe me on my word. There's only 6 bags in a deposit. That's really not a lot. And if you really want to have like store more equipment, then you have to make dedicated storage characters like this one. I mean, character can have 10 bags, while storage is only at 6. So you're basically forced to create character to store all your goods in it. And that's not good. It would be very much a quality of life change if you would have more bags in the deposit. And you know, a lot of people would say that a lot of items will generate a lag on a server or increase the cost of a server, but I mean, it doesn't have to cost contribution points or gold. I mean, I'm sure you can figure something out, you know. So on that note, thanks for watching. Bye.